Welcome and ting and ting and ting. Back with another video for you. We're going back to Scotland, We're going back to Scotland. And this one is called Scottish Border Reivers and King James the fifth. Reivers, Reivers. I guess that's the way you pronounce that, man. Sorry about that, Got a little sinus situation going on here, but thank you all for watching this with me. You know what I mean? I really enjoy watching these historical videos, cultural videos, music videos. Drop in the comments something you would want me to react to, see what the vibe is and take there. Let's go ahead and watch this video here. Let's YouTube and sim and see what I go on with this.
If I said I was going to tell you a story of clans and cattle raiding, of 16th century hardmen whose loyalty was to their chief before their king, who lived by their family name and code of honour, that a modernising Stuart king was desperate to bend to his will, you might think that I was talking about Gaelic-speaking Highlanders, but no. Today, I want to tell you a tale about Border Reivers. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. In the meantime,
I was thinking when you was talking about the clans and who's loyal to the chief or the king and stuff, and I was thinking as you were saying that, like everybody's talking about family values and how families have to stick together and stuff, and how it seems that families stick together more back then. Maybe it was like a badge of honor to be part of a family. Right now, people are family, but maybe we're just in another crossroads, of the world. So you don't feel that family vibe. Maybe I don't, because I was raised in a single family home. So I don't know how it was to have a real mother and father in the house. All I know was my mom. My dad was there for the first 8 years of my life, but who remembers that really, you know what I mean? Yeah, they were married, he just wasn't home a whole lot. So let's talk about the clans and how they band together, and that could cause conflict with the kings and stuff, because they're going to follow the chief, not the king. So the king have to intercede with the chief to get to the people to do the bidding, which is kind of like how it is with countries now, you know what I mean? It's sort of difficult. Let's get back to the video.
let me tell you a story. We're often accused of knowing nothing about our history. So tell me this. Did you realise that there were clans in the borders? Let me know in the comment section below. Now sometimes you read a quote that makes an impact, but you can't for the life of you remember where you saw it. And for me, there was one case of an historian writing, I think in 1603, who said, "The history of the borders is over." Has nothing ever happened in the borders since? Of course there has. There was that time in 1883 when two Melrose butchers invented seven-a-side rugby. And of course there was that famous split between Gala and Melrose when Melrose stole the strips and the rugby goalposts. Border even wasn't entirely over. Oh aye, there's been a lot of history in the borders down the years. But 1603 bookended a period that probably started with the English invasion of Edward Longshanks 300 years earlier. There was a legitimacy to crossing the border and raiding, best exemplified by good Sir James the Black Douglas. There were numerous English invasions where the English ravaged the south of Scotland as they came. And of course, often they never had the opportunity because Scottish leaders employed a scorched earth policy and burned their own border areas before the English got them.
The more I watch these videos, especially about Scotland and Ireland and stuff, and even when you talk about as far down as Romania and stuff like that, it seems like the English or British, however you want to call them, the English, is in the middle of everything, you know what I mean? They're in the middle of everything, you hear them going into Scotland, you hear them going into Ireland. No, let me say this straight up the bat. What happened then don't have anything to do with the people living there now. So let's think about it now and how we're going to live together instead of using the past to create division. Because you see what the division does. It causes wars and strifes and famine and oppression and slavery and all kind of crazy stuff. Slavery is not a derivative of that, but you know, it could be a cause of it. What am I saying here? But anyway, when you pay attention to that there, it's kind of interesting. Let's get back to this video here.
There. So why risk farming the area when raiding across the border was so often a tool of government anyway? And why give loyalty to the crown when they'd leave you unprotected and at the mercy of an invading army next time round? This bred a particular style of hardy, self-reliant people either side of the border who had more in common with each other than they did with their respective capitals. Hence, at the Battle of Pinkie Cleugh, the most brutal battle of Henry VIII's rough wooing, Scots borderers and English borderers who fought bitterly with each other from week to week, they were pitted against themselves here and seen chatting amongst themselves. It was only when they were noticed that they started But in 1603, James VI of Scotland became James I of England, and he wanted to stamp out the lawless reiving either side of a border that, for him, no longer existed. Now, the history of the borders was over. In 1605, James's commission to bring order to the Middle Shires had 79 people executed and many more in the years to follow. But James wasn't the first to try to stamp out border reiving. I want to tell you about his granddad, James V, and Johnny Black Jock Armstrong. Johnny Armstrong was a man in those debatable borderlands from which the Armstrongs hailed. He wasn't a great landowner, and yet he was fabulously wealthy, and he could retain 150 men and put many more in the field. I've heard it said that it was he who funded Langham Castle.
You know, again, he's talking and he said something. I've noticed that a lot of these people had nicknames, the Black this, or, you know, something like that. And people used to just get nicknames just by living. I don't see that very much anymore. Or is it maybe I'm too isolated to see it? But people don't have nicknames anymore. Like at work, I'm the only one giving anybody nicknames, you know. Nobody never give anybody nicknames that sticks. But that's what I was thinking there, you know. And there's always a story behind the nickname. When I was a kid, we give each other nicknames all the time. That's something that's slowly disappearing, it seems. Now, people get nicknames if they play sports, you know what I mean? If you play sports, you get a nickname, you know? And a lot of nicknames are mean-spirited anymore. I guess that's always been. Let's get back to the story.
And Gilnockie Tower here was a stronghold. In a time where land was wealth, Johnny Armstrong had little. He grew rich from blackmail. They say that there wasn't a town between here and Newcastle that didn't pay protection money to Johnny so as to keep their family homes and cattle safe from cross-border reiving. This was a problem for James V. James was trying to maintain peaceful relations with Henry VIII, his southern neighbour, and of course, his uncle. Remember, James was the son of Margaret Tudor. Incidentally, I've made a video about her that I'm really pleased with, and if you watch it, it'll give you a context so you can understand the position when James had just come into his period of personal rule. He certainly didn't want lawlessness in the border to interfere with his relationship with his uncle Henry. So, on the 5th of July 1530, James headed south with an army of men to tackle the problem of border reiving. Now, I've heard accounts that James sent a letter to Johnny Armstrong inviting him to hunt, or some other pretext to lure him into the folly of a meeting. Personally, I'm not entirely convinced. Johnny was now a middle-aged...
You know, I just figured out something else too while watching this here, as he said, Raven. So, as a kid, we had these steel drum orchestras, right? So they played steel drums and stuff. And I know you all know what I'm talking about, but and a lot of the bands had that at the ending of their name, Reivers, Reivers. So in essence, what the Ravens are is the people who raid across the border. Okay, so that explains something. You see, figure out something from the past that meant something here. So, and even they used to have it in for football teams, like soccer teams. The St. James Reivers. I'm just saying that out loud. They don't use that word as much anymore. But I remember that word when I was a kid. So okay, all right, figure out something. I knew the meaning of the word already. Nobody uses it anymore, so the spelling kind of threw me off.
Man, with years of experience surviving and growing rich in those difficult borderlands. James, a 17-year-old boy, no doubt testosterone fueled, who just entered into his personal rule after a painful wardship and difficult relations with stepfather, the Earl of Douglas, who he hated. He'd want to show who was boss and make sure that the people of Scotland and Uncle Henry knew it. Now, I'm pretty sure Johnny Armstrong understood the real politic enough to recognise that there was danger. He'd asked for and was granted safe conduct. But surely he knew the worthlessness of safe conduct that had been given when James's great-granddad, James II, had murdered the 8th Earl of Douglas in Stirling Castle. Whatever the judgment, he travelled north from here to Caerlinrig with a small group of his adherents. He travelled unarmed and dressed in his finery to meet the king. Both would prove to be mistakes.
Oh man.
Johnny and his men came through this valley along by the Moss Paul burn. In front of them was a narrow pass between these hills. It's a perfect place for an ambush. And here the ambush was sprung. The Armstrongs were surrounded by the king's army. When taken before the young king, James accused them of treason. Johnny stated his case. He'd never killed a Scotsman and couldn't possibly be accused of treason. Attacking the English was as often Scottish foreign policy as it was a crime. Johnny offered bribes from his ill-gotten wealth to save his skin. Maybe not the most politic move. After all, his ill-gotten wealth is what has got him in this fix in the first place. And James used it against him. Armstrong had shown disrespect by coming to a meeting better dressed than the king.
Oh man.
That was his treason. Seeing that he was doomed, Johnny retorted, "I'm but a fool to seek grace at a graceless face. But had I known that you would have taken me this day, I would have lived in the borders despite King Henry and you both." Maybe you had expected to go hunting after all. Now this is the churchyard at Caerlinrig. Johnny and several of his men were hung from nearby trees and buried in a mass grave which was only recently discovered by archaeologists. Now we can feel sympathy for Johnny, and that's natural. We can romanticise him with border ballads, and that's been done. But the truth is that in our day, we'd call Johnny Armstrong a gangster. It's just that on that day, he came across a bigger gangster, a more powerful gangster who was trying to keep good relations with a more formidable gangster still. Johnny was small time, and he held the territory between two bigger crime families. It's Scottish history, but it could have been an episode of The Wire. The authorities of the day were just the biggest gangsters. And I'm not entirely sure how much that's changed, if I'm honest. But James may have created rather than solved a problem. You see, he ended up at war with Henry anyway. And just days before he died, as James's army fled the Battle of Solway Moss, the Armstrongs and other Border Reivers attacked them, taking the side of the English against their own duplicitous king. Johnny's remembered with this memorial erected in 1897. What's more, Johnny had children who managed to escape the mass hanging. And when Johnny Armstrong's grandson grew up, James's grandson, the sixth of his name, had to deal with an even bigger Armstrong,
Wow.
Kinmont Willie. You see, history in the Borders was not yet over. If you want to hear about Kinmont Willie, a video of his story will be launched here in a few days after this one. And of course, you can always visit the Clan Arm.
Hey, what that last part that he said there shows off something that I always say here, you know what I mean? Those two gentlemen was fighting, James and John to begin with, and then their grandkids are still fighting pretty much the same war. They're fighting the same war years later. It's like they didn't learn from what's going on and the misery and the pain that they cause. It's our territory, let's fight it. And I totally understand. I get it. I understand not disparaging anybody for fighting for the country or for the territory or nothing like that. That's not the point. It seems like the history is repeating itself. That's the thing, you know what I mean? Like I always say, you know, you see back then they didn't care. They go in there and they said, okay, we're going to take this land, it's ours, this and that. Nowadays they do politicking before they do it because, you know, people aren't quick to say, let's go off to war unless you give them some false narrative of what's going on and over where you want to go invade and dehumanizing the foe before you attack them and things like that. Back then it was like, you know, let's just do the vibe, you know, but I mean, it's just the same thing over and over again, man. I'll leave a link in the description for this video, so if you want to go check it out. This guy here is really good. Check out his channel, please do. If you want to learn more about Scotland, really good stuff he brings up there, so go check out his channel. I also leave links to other videos that I've done on Scotland, and, you know, let everybody watch everything and everybody learn about everybody, and then maybe we might understand each other, all right? In the meantime, you all take care of each other. Cool runnings.